Look at the case of expenditure multiplier. As you know that a rise in planned investment spending, a rise in planned investment spending or a rise in autonomous consumers expenditure shifts the aggregate demand function upward and leads to an increase in aggregate output. Look at this case. 8.1 Y1 is $1,000 billion, but at point 2 Y2 is equal to $1,200. It means Y1 AD shifted to Y2 AD. The question is how this shift can occur. Suppose that a new electric motor is invented that makes all factory machines 3 times more efficient. Because firms are suddenly more optimistic about the profitability of investing in new machines that use this new motor, planned investment spending increases by 100 billion from the initial level. As you know that in the previous case, I1 or the original planned investment expenditure was $300 billion. But in this case, I2, which is the new investment level, look at C remains constant. We are not talking about the change in consumption expenditures. We are only talking about the change in planned investment expenditures. Look at from I1 to I2. You know that I1, when we were talking about I1, the value of investment was 300. But now, when we are talking about I2, this investment has increased to 400. So we have the value 600, and you know that the value of a autonomous spending is 200. So 200 plus 400, we can get the value of uh, 600. Why this change has occurred? Due to the invention of new electric motor, because we are talking about the investment component of the GDP, the aggregate demand. So suppose if a new electric motor is invented, if a new electric machine is invented, it means that now the factory will produce, or now the factory machines will work 3 times more efficiently than the previous case. So the firms are suddenly more optimistic about the profitability of investment in new machines. What the firms will do? The firm will start investment by purchasing new machines. Why? Because they are thinking that now new machines can produce 2 or 3 or 5 times more than the previous case. It means that their planned investment expenditures will rise. So initially, the planned investment expenditures were $300 billion, and now the new planned investment expenditures are $400 billion. So we can write Y2AD is equal to C plus I2, which is equal to 600 plus 0.5. Now the question is how this increase in planned investment spending affect the aggregate output. Very simply, look at this diagram. The economy was initially at equilibrium at point 1, where 1000 was the initial aggregate output. Now, with the invention of new electric machine, the firms has increased their investment expenditures. That's why we have a shift in the curve, and the aggregate demand is now Y2 AD. So when planned investment spending I1 is 300 billion, the aggregate demand is Y1 AD, and the equilibrium occur at point 1 where output is 100 billion. So the 100 billion increase in planned investment spending adds directly to aggregate demand and shifts the aggregate demand function upward to Y2 AD. Now, aggregate demand equals output at the intersection of Y2 AD with the 45% line, where Y is equal to YAD. The new aggregate demand curve intersects the aggregate output line, which is a black line, on point 2. So as a result of 100 billion increase in planned investment expenditures, Equilibrium output rises by 200 billion from 1000 to 1200. It means the change in output is about $200 billion. The initial spending, investment spending was 200 and the new spending is 400. It means that we have increased the investment expenditures by $200 billion. But the result is 200 from 1000 to 1200. So we can say that for every dollar increase in planned investment spending, aggregate output has increased twofold or two times. Why? Because initially investment was 300 and the new investment is 400. It means that we have increased the investment expenditures by about $100 from 300 to 400. But look at the aggregate output. The aggregate output has changed from 1000 to 2 to 1200. It means a change in investment is about 100, but the output has changed 200. That's why we can say that for every dollar increase in planned investment spending, aggregate output has increased twofold, two times. It means that we are changing investment by $1, but the output is changing by $2. If we change investment by $100, the output has changed by $200. So the change in aggregate output is two times than the change in investment expenditures. The ratio of the change in aggregate output to a change in planned investment spending is known as expenditure multiplier. If we take the ratio of the change in aggregate output and the change in investment planned expenditures, this concept or this ratio is known as expenditure multiplier. So in this case, expenditure multiplier is 2. Why? If we are increasing investment expenditures by $1, it means our output has increased by $2. In other words, if we are changing our investment expenditures by $100 billion, it means our aggregate output has increased by $200 billion. That's why we can say that the expenditure multiplier is 2.